Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to do a review of War Story Occupied France. This is a game by Dave Neale and David Thompson. Beautiful illustrations by Kwanchai Moya. This is a highly advanced choose-your-own-adventure, narrative branching, storyline-driven game for 1 to 6 players, where you are it's tension, it's intrigue, it's espionage, it's preparations behind enemy lines, etc. Growing up, I was a big fan in the late 70s and early 80s of the choose your own adventure stories. I remember I was a real achiever academically, and so I always wanted to be the first in line to get to go to the library so that I could go get the choose your own adventure stories and read them. It was a big deal to me in my elementary school years. Over time, I realized that I could just read them all through and kind of get the gist. So the initial shock, the love of choose your own adventures and the binary paths you take and stuff ebbed and flowed. But I realized that one of my mortal enemies really liked them too, and he was a sequential person. And so I realized that if I got there first, I could check out the book he needed next in the series before he could, and then you could always check it out twice in a row. And so I kept doing that as a beautiful metagame. That's my meta choose your own adventure about choosing your own adventure. So I have a long history of liking this type of style. That said, through the early 80s and the 90s, I kind of dissipated until the advent of the computer adventure game, which then reignited my love of adventure storyline. King's Quest, Space Quest, Tales of Carandia, the LucasArts, Indiana Jones, and especially Monkey Island, the designer of which I got to work with in the late 90s, early 2000s on video games. And so that ignited my love, and then over recent years it kind of cooled off as I realized that I just wasn't as into adventure games. So this kind of ebbs back up. I played quite a few, and tried to like them, but up until War Story, I hadn't seen something that sort of piqued my interest as maybe a new paradigm or a new approach to it that could reignite my love of what is essentially a whole host of very good narrative games out there. And so that is the most long-winded way to say, let's take a look. Okay, let's go over what comes inside War Story Occupied France. You're going to get a lot of components here. I'm going to keep it as generic as possible. You're going to get a set of people that you can choose to be part of your team as you go through the various narrated missions. There are 8 total characters. These are the 4 out of play. I've already set up to show you a display of those in play right here. And each of these characters has a different set of attributes and skills that you're going to leverage as you play through the 3 missions that are available. You're going to get some tokens. These tokens are going to be useful for boosting certain skills and attributes. Some are wild cards that must be used quickly. Others are for firearms, and others for actual skills beyond just shooting people. You're going to get a variety of cards. These cards are going to come into play as told by as the stories. Cards will come in, come out. Each one has a different kind of thing going on, but we're not going to go too close into it. Again, try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. Starting situations here, you're going to get 3 packets, one corresponding to each of the 3 missions that you're going to be embarking on. It's recommended you do them sequentially, and that is what I have done. A few other bits and pieces. You have some different cubes. These have a contextual representation in the game. At times you'll be asked to place them in different ways, in different spots, to do different things, and that's that. You're also going to get a rule book. The rule book goes over all of the high-level things you're going to do. What are you doing? You are the French Resistance. You are helping the French Resistance. That's what these missions are all about. You can see a general idea. Everything you need to know. I haven't spoiled it yet. Also, every mission, you're going to get a mission book. This is the heartbeat, the pulse of your experience, your narrative experience that you're going to branch through. So open a couple pages. Don't want to give it away, but you'll see some different writing and texts. Various aspects. And then you're going to get a team sheet. This is what you're going to take through the entire course of the 3 missions that you play, if you play them all sequentially. As you go, you're going to be crossing off different pieces of this information. That's going to help you, when you go in, when some events are going to feed into outcomes of other events later on in the story. Also, it's a good way to save your progress so that you do not have to play the game in an entirety in a single session. Again, that's what we've got. I'm not going to give you more than that. I'm just going to give you a quasi playthrough of how the game plays. Okay, we're going to do a quick idea of how to play. I'm not going to give it away because, well, if I'm giving it away, I'm giving the story away. I'll try to keep it generic but understandable. What happens during the game, you're going to start up by grabbing the first packet. The first packet is going to reveal some things. For example, there's a map on the other side of here I'm not going to show you, and there's a little bit of an idea, like here's your mission briefing, here's where you start. And then you select your team. You can choose your team based on a variety of what you want. You can pick any of the 8 characters to start with. Some of them have special abilities, some are just very specific to their skills and abilities. I have the damage side and the non-damage side. You'll notice that some of the attributes change. When one of your team members is damaged or hurt, they go here. If they're mortally hurt, well, there's nothing you can do for them. So that's kind of what mortally wounded means. They all get pistols, but that doesn't mean a whole lot to start with until you know the story. But hey, as it goes on, you're going to get different equipment, different pieces, etc. Each one will be assigned a color. That color is going to be useful when you're placing certain of these members on different portions of, say, a given map that's going to show up in the center. You're going to want to map, one token stays here, one goes on the board, so you know who's who, which is which, etc. Now, I've already started doing a mission here. I'm not going to... I don't think there's anything too spoilery here, but you'll see that there's aspects of the game, things that I've circled off. Not going to tell you where. I do on the back of the back of each is a blank sheet, which I've been using to sort of keep numeric number of how I've gone. It's a little extra housekeeping, but I found because of an issue right off the bat that it was necessary for me to do so. So how would you play this game without me showing you a game? I'm going to tell you how. So I'm just going to make stuff up. So you get a mission, and the mission briefing says... the General Bullcarter is in town tomorrow, and you're trying to take him out before he shores up Normandy's defenses and makes D-Day worse, etc. So General Bullcarter-ish, you must poison the marshmallow of his s'more, or whatever. So what you do is you're going to get a map or something, and it's going to say, okay, well, here's where we start, and then you're going to read a text, and it's going to say, as you're immediately going to get a choice. Let's say we read and we get to a page, number 104. Okay, you need to decide whether you're going to poison the marshmallow while he's making the s'more, or try to get to the store and poison all the marshmallows. Which way do you go? That's a branching path. You decide to go sneak in and poison the s'more while he's having his campfire. So then you go, well, if you're going to do that choice, go to 104 or 106. If you're going to do the poison all the marshmallows in existence, then go to section 487. So then you'd flip through to 487 and be like, okay, who has the best s'more rating? And sometimes you're going to be like, oh, well, clearly she has the best s'more rating, so I'll use her. If the s'more rating is greater than 6, then turn to section 22. If it's not, if it's 3 to 5, turn to page 1 or to section 1. If it's less than that, then go to page 99 or whatever. And then you're going to branch off again, and you're going to go off and do the whatever it says there. Then you're going to read a story excerpt and be like, while you were attempting to put the marshmallow on, the marshmallow sneezed and woke up the general, and the general looked at you and then ran away, and now you've got to convince him to go back and buy more s'mores and try it again so you can have happiness. And you're going to be going on like that. That's generally the basic way it's going to go. Take 1 damage, or his guards aim at you and shoot you, but you run away into the forest. How's your awareness level? Your awareness level's 2, so then you go, well, as you're running in the forest, you ran into a rodent trap, and how's your you take 1 damage, except the trap is rusty and nothing happens, stuff like that. You're going to see how it branches off in many different paths, and a lot of these are going to be built on your skills, and not just a particular skill. Sometimes you're going to add up all of the skill ratings for someone. Say, how is everyone's awareness? Well, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8's a big number. So if the whole group has a nice high awareness, then you get a different outcome than, say, if they had less of an awareness. So sometimes it matters what one person does, sometimes another. Another thing it's going to do is say, okay, 2 of your people are going to run to the 2 different convenience stores and poison all the s'mores as a backup plan. And so you're going to take, say your 2 units, and there'll be a map here. let's pretend this is a map, and you're going to take your 2 units and you're going to put them, here's the stores and here's the cubes. And then something's going to happen and be like, well, the supermarket clerk, accidentally spilled all the marshmallows into the rat poison and they're already poisoned. So I guess it doesn't matter. Okay, cool. And everybody back. So then you come back and you regroup and whatever. And that's kind of how that's the flow of it anyway. I'm giving you entirely fictitious. We are not going to poison any s'mores. Trust me not. The storyline is actually far, far more interesting and far more historically plausible than what I'm saying now. The one thing that's interesting, the one thing that isn't going to come up and I'm not going to show you is that there are times when you're going to be making these branching paths, just like a lot of other narrated stories. Then you're going to go into what's called an encounter. And this is kind of a zoomed in, tactical, situational, choice-making subplot that has a reinforced, like a map. So say, for example, you're on this high-level map, but then you flip over and you get this smaller map, which I'm going to fictitiously show you. Well, actually, we don't have to. Let's say we have a map here, and like, okay, well, I was over at Houdini Land, and now I'm going to go to Clownville. So you go into Clownville, and you find out it's a strategic, arsenal for high-level weaponry, and you're going to go into a warehouse, and so you're going to make choices, and you go into this encounter. As you go into it, it's sort of a submission of plots, and you go say, okay, well, I want my sniper here. I want my 2 guys entering from here. I want this guy. He's going to hang out at the window and look around. But maybe if I had 2 people looking at the window and 1 person going in, that would be less fatal. Do I really need a long-range sniper? What if I have everybody just rush in at once? But what about situational awareness? These are the kind of interesting things that are going to come up when you are playing that encounter, and the encounters are very varied. You're going to go into an encounter, you're going to solve the encounter, you're going to pull back out to the storyline, and that's an interesting technique that's going to happen as well. This is about the most spoiler-free, visualize in your mind way that I can describe it, but that's basically the essence of the game. You're going to go through, if you're going to succeed, or people are going to die. There's a high possibility some people will die, some of them may die, but it's a price you're willing to pay, apparently, because you bought the game. So anyway, you're going to finish up, and then you go to mission 1. It's going to give you cues like, hey, if the courtesy clerk managed to poison the marshmallow with quinine, then circle S. If not, then circle W. And then later on, you're going to be at another branching path and be like, would you like to buy a marshmallow? If you chose W, then say etc. And so you're going to see little hooks and weaves and stuff. You'll notice one thing missing here, and that is dice. This is wholly and completely deterministic. Everything is based on your choices. There is no dice at all. There's no upping the odds. Or not. For example, here, your awareness is 3. You read up and say, who has the highest awareness? If the awareness is 4 to 6, well, go to this page. And you're going to assume that the higher the awareness, the better the outcome. That's generally how it works. While you're at 3, that's your maximum person, but you're like, man, we could use a skill token and make it 4 and get that better outcome, whatever that may be. How that happens, though, is that you are using these expendable resources. You're not going to get extras of these. It's very rare. You might get some special, super powerful awareness things that come in, and those come quickly. You're going to be granted them as part of the story quickly. They're going to be removed quickly. So you don't want to like hang them around and while you're waiting to fight the final boss kind of thing. But you can use that to beef it up. At the same time, you don't know how the story is going to end. You don't know if a more important conflict is going to come up, or you really could have used those. That's the tricky part, the gut-wrenching decision-making point that you're going to have to, figure out on your own. So anyway, that's an example of how you play War Story Occupied France, at least without giving away hopefully much of any details. But I can tell you, again, the missions in here, way more plausible and way less wacky than what I've described to you, but the idea of what you're doing and the flow and the cadence of what you're going to do is pretty similar to what I explained. So I'm going to go make a s'more, and we'll be back with my final thoughts. Alright, final thoughts on War Story Occupied France. As usual, we always go over the cons first, then we go over the pros, and then we give my final thoughts. I'd like to say there aren't any cons, but unfortunately there are a couple things that do need to be pointed out that I think have been that just need to be noted, particularly since this channel has an emphasis on I buy all my own games myself. And so as a purchaser, as someone right next to the rest of the gaming groups that are buying these games, I don't have the privileges of designer hosted playthroughs or whatever. I want to play these as someone who's going to go out, buy the game, and play it. In that regard, there's a couple things to mention. One is that there's right out of the gate, I ran into an issue, and it's a bummer, but it does highlight that there's despite all of the work, if you read the designer notes and a lot of the background of this, there was a huge amount of work, years of work put into trying to create this really clever branching storyline system. Unfortunately, right out of the gate, I ended up with 3 choices of cards that laid out, which told me to remove, after resolving one card, the wrong card. And that was, I mean, eventually, I mean, I went to Board Game Geek, and sure enough, like Mission 1, actually Mission 1 paragraph 349, it was like, yep, that's, you should have removed the other one instead. The counter for that being is, well, I mean, it's not that big, it doesn't really affect the long story, you can still get through it and whatever, and I'm like, but unfortunately, that's not a great start for something like that, and so I realized, and over the time I've realized that there are a few places where the game just really kind of misfires on things that really should have been shorn up. The Mission 1, paragraph 108, the directions are wrong for that. It leads you to the wrong entry, but eventually, using your wits out of band, you can go find the right place. Mission 1, paragraph 349, like I said, discard 1. Now, this one was one logical. I'm like, that's odd for me not to discard some card different than the one I just resolved, but I don't know that. As someone playing this game, as someone reading it, I don't know. I don't know if maybe that particular location that I just resolved was not re-entering. Maybe it was re-entering. Maybe you can go see it again, and maybe because if I circle something, whatever, I don't know. I can guess logically that you get rid of the cards that you resolve, but I don't know that. There might be twists and turns. I mean, these aren't novice, story writers here, so that is unfortunate. And in the end, it wasn't a huge deal. We managed to resolve it. Mission 1, entry 158, for example, that says discard a card, but you never had it because it came from entry 496, I think, which there's a way to get to a place that has supposed to have a circle, but it's not there. Mission 2, 219, draw a card you already have. Mission 2, paragraph 346, move agents with blue cubes, which you're never told to put the blue cubes on. I mean, these are little things that come up, and the designer response, which I think is fair, I think it's one side of the coin that's fair, is that none of these are showstoppers. They're unfortunate circumstances, a series of unfortunate misevents. And in that regard, I think you're right. If you are buying this game, you are likely someone who's familiar with Board Game Geek, and so you can go there and figure it out. But I still appeal to the person who might see Osprey Games, reads a book, finds out there's a game, goes, I'm confused. And there are places that confuse, but that's not the biggest thing. It's innocuous in its short term, and I agree that none of these are showstoppers that should stop you from purchasing it, to give a spoiler. But it reminds me of a time I was working on a game in, I think it was like the early 2000s, with some really really famous game designers, and there was an issue with the tutorial that we were working on where it went out for the first rev, and the tutorial had several ways that it could go off the rails and not complete. And one of the producers was like, that's fine, but this game is so easy, you don't really need to take the tutorial and whatever. But the designer, and this is a well-known designer, we're talking Diablo or the Warcraft, he made a good point that it's not about that more than it's about the trust relationship that you present to the people that you're giving this game to. That you are giving them, you're planting doubt, you're planting confidence doubt. And that he made that point, and so we, of course, in that point, we were able to patch and do and fix stuff and everything. And here you're going to get errata and notes and whatever for those who have awareness of what that is, rather than people picking it up and going, oh, I could, and then just getting lost and going away. But the good thing is, just like in that particular situation with the tutorial and it broken, there are mitigators there from the reputation of the people working on it and the sizable veteran leadership and experience of those people that help mitigate it. But still, make sure that if something seems a little off, go check Board Game Geek and make sure that there's not some issue. Again, And none of these derailed me entirely, but again, it's one of the reasons why when you write out of the gate, you have something wrong on BGG points it out, you have to go, okay, now I got to break away from my suspension of disbelief to go write down the numbers of all these things in case someone else runs into something later, and they have. And that's unfortunate, but not that bad of a deal. No, honestly, it wasn't bad to go find this way through anyway, because it's kind of a nice way to kind of remap your journey. The other thing, point two, is that the multiplayer here is, it says 1 to 6, I guess. I didn't, with the right group that wants to join a story together and make group decisions, sure. I didn't find many that did. In other games where you're working together, you are responsible for a given character, and then you could do that here, I guess. But then there's times that I group it up, send these people here, whatever. But you're not really in that role here. Here, you're all just kind of making decisions at the top level to go, what do we do next, guys? Where do we go? And here, yeah, you're one mind together, and one set of hands actually drives it. And what I found in playing this with a few people is that you wind up with 1 or 2 people that are actually engaged in it, and the rest are just kind of trailing off, just kind of keeping it in the background. And so I didn't find this to be any better with more than one. I actually think that I enjoy it most when I'm going through the story myself, making my own decisions. Maybe there's a value, particularly in encounters, thinking through, because these encounters that you have are really well fleshed out, and I mean really logically well fleshed out. And so that might be, that wasn't my favorite. And finally, there's the issue of replayability, because I got that a lot. Like, how replayable is this game, or whatever? And I don't really care about replayability more than I care about meaningful replayability. I mean, replayability. I've seen Shrek 100 times. I've seen Monsters Inc. 100 times. I've seen Pirates of the Caribbean 200 times. Are they replayable movies? Yeah, but that doesn't mean I'm looking for a different experience every time. I know what I'm doing. And here, I think there's a plausible and a reasonable level of meaningful replayability, in that you're going to have different paths, and small changes in your decisions will branch out to broader and larger path changes than you might think they would. And so I think that it's actually not really a con. It's just basically, if you're looking for a game where, like, what, on the 11th playthrough, am I going to feel like I might see the same things? Yeah. Yeah. So let's get into my other favorite part, though. Let's get into pros. So for the pros for this game, and there are a lot of them, even though it tripped up out of the gate, like right away, with the eye roll, like, really, we're starting this way. Lucky me, as usual, I get the bum luck. The game catches itself, and then it runs the rest of the race with minimal issue at a full gallop. The scope of the story branching here is substantial. It is not a simple matter of turn this page, go here, make a choice, turn this page, go there, make a choice. It is great. The presentation itself, all of the pieces and components and the way they're revealed over time is top notch. As a story set, this is at its heart the core gameplay of the text being manifested in really different visual aids that come through and kind of pop up in a great way. It aids, all of the aids that you have are visually and thematically introductions with enough snippets and bits of eye focal points that in a few glances you can get this kind of context and cohesive viewpoint of a story without having it have to be a movie. You can build a movie in your mind from all these pieces and stuff, and I like that. I think that's fantastic. The story itself isn't necessarily deeply twisting and turning surprises at every single corner. With then the UFOs appeared and s'mores became transcendent, stuff like that. It's more this stylized kind of Sunday afternoon matinee on Turner Classic Movies kind of story, and it really holds up well. It's not rote. It's not, okay, I've seen this and it's the same old story. No, there's some really interesting twists and turns. There's some things that you do, they're like, man. And I like that they're not toggle choices. A choose your own adventure book. If you choose this, go here. If you choose this, go here. Here you've got, okay, it could be, there's a little bits and pieces in there, but you're varying your decisions by both your personal and individual and group choices to decide when you're going to employ some of the ways you can tweak the story by bumping up your skills or bumping up your weaponry, or using those special, hey, we have a power up that lasts 10 seconds, let's use it kind of feel. I love the large variation from small input changes. Even at the very start, you're given a pretty broad decision point that's like, you can go this way or you can go that way. And maybe they'll cross paths in between, but they are starkly different. So that's a pretty impressive feat. You know, there's a fear in a lot that all of the choices are just pointless tributaries to the same eventual river mouth. And if that's true in places here, it's pretty covert. That isn't really true. I didn't feel that as I was getting into the game at all. I felt like it was a real good story. And I like the fact, again, it's not branching choices. You feel, as you're going through this game, you're going to feel like you're being placed and positioned, and then you're going to make choices, and then you're going to go down in this other story path, not just a branch path, but a story path that's like, now pull out this encounter. Now we're going to really dive deep into where we're at situationally, and then we're going to place our people where we think they're going to get the most success based on the inputs we see. And some of these, you will pick up on some ideas from description and go and find out later as you roll back. Because I mean, that's another advantage of doing that you can go, oh, if I'd actually thought that through from what I read, I probably could have gone and done this particular decision. Everything is deterministic, and that's the other thing, is that I'm very impressed that it holds my interest for being a diceless, chanceless experience. Sometimes you use chance or dice to go like, well, so that, oh, well, maybe next time you'll roll the dice better and you'll go down a different path. You don't have to worry about that. If you screw up or you make a poor choice, you will see the results of that poor choice, and it will all point back to you. And you'll be like, oh, unless you play with a group, in which case you all suck. I'm playing this alone. I'm kidding. There's no risk here of destiny die, like just like messing up your odds. The consequences related directly to your actions, and a nice not a timer per se, but a nice tracking as you're making choices. Certain choices you make are going to bring the Eye of Sauron a little closer, a little faster, and going on. And you're going to find that you're going to take some hits, you're going to take some damage. There isn't okay, now everybody get back to the station and heal up and we go on to the next thing. No, you have a real feel of this environment, this situation that's transpiring, and you're into it with your group and with the different units and the different choices. Again, lots of different choices deterministically that bring about just a new breed of adventure game that's really, really exciting. Can't give you spoilers, but it's exciting. But I felt satisfied at each and every turn by how the story was unfolding and how it related directly to my inputs into that story. So my verdict, again, as I talked about, I've ebbed and flowed from my interest in adventure games and in story-based games, and I've tried quite a few board games. The City of Angels. I've tried Legacy of Dragonholt, which I despised because I think Galzer, my father's work, lots of different ways that people have tried to build in narratives, and in each case, I just didn't find them hitting. I'm like, I objectively can look and go, this is a good game. It's just not something that's really hitting me right. Particularly Legacy of Dragonholt, which has the big issue where once you create a character, in my mind, you've done the interesting part. Everything after that is like, okay, if your skill, based on your skill, go do the most obvious thing. Like if you have a nice skill in something, you're going to use that choice. There's no reason to use a different choice. I like here in War Story that doesn't necessarily apply. There are ways, and that's that you don't necessarily have the most obvious choice be the one true path that basically just shuttles you off once you've created your character. So, I do like the immersion into the story that this game gives you, particularly in the thematic setting. I think they chose a really interesting setting. I think that it says only 3 missions, and I think that could, from description alone, feel like it's not very many, but I think it is, because you can play these over. You will get some meaningful variability, not perpetual variability, but some meaningful variable playthroughs of it. I think it's sufficient, more than sufficient, for the price point I paid. I like being immersed in the story, and I didn't feel like I was guessing what the designer wanted me to answer, like some old-style adventure games used to do, where you're really trying to guess what the parser parses or guess what the designer put in a puzzle, rather than guessing purely from the joy of the puzzle. And on the video games, like the game that came back and brought me back to that was Disco Elysium, which restored my interest that you could stretch the boundaries of cleverness into something extraordinarily and new. Now, tragic backstory to Disco Elysium, the video game, but no tragic backstory here. This is an absolute top-notch fun experience. Did it accomplish what the other games that I didn't like could not? Yes, because the investment is wholly deterministic, but not cut and dried, because the built-in encounters that are logical and flesh out logically give an agency and purpose. The writing is interesting. The story traverses along at a non-sluggish pace. The interesting trade-off in tokens and the bumps in those tokens and they're painfully exciting to have to figure out when's the right time. The reinforcement aids and such that wrap the story are done elegantly, placing your map, placing this location. Really, the art really it really establishes the tone of the game, and it feels almost like playing a game. The video game Sniper Elite, for example, is a first person shooter video game that has these really cool visual mission briefings that make you feel like you're going in. This is your mission. There's lots of ways to do it. It's up to you, and I like that. So I can't wait for more entries in this series. I hope that the initial scaffolding provided to create this complicated branching framework can be simplified, or I hope that they can expedite some better testing harnesses or whatever to make sure that the issues I ran into don't happen for future down the road. Hopefully, once you do the first version of anything, you can refine the process and maybe get some more polish in the next one. Automated testing, whatever. But this honestly is a very quiet resurgence into storytelling, branching, narrative-centric games that I've sworn off for a while. I highly recommend it. I want more of it. I will buy any next installment because I believe in the system. I believe that it's solid, past the little hiccups. And yeah, highly recommended. Give it a shot. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.